mostly because I was happy with how things turned out last night. I felt like I was more unfiltered for everyone. That was kind of the goal, is to let my guard down a little bit more and to just sort of talk about my life a bit for you guys of late. And I figured I'd do that again tonight. I also want to start off by thanking. There were about four individuals last night who donated and really changed my perspective. So thank you for that. I put a link down below again in case anybody would like to donate to this lunch ministry that I do in Covington from Monday to Friday. Just helps me buy the food, helps me get enough gas to get to and from Goshen and Covington, and just gives me a bit of peace of mind. And I really appreciate the people that came through last night. Thank you so much. So I thought I'd come on and just talk a little bit about what it's even been like. I haven't really talked nuts and bolts what it's been like being homeless or living in the van. Although technically I wouldn't really consider this true homelessness, because I have at least a van and transportation. So let me first say this, God has taken care of me greatly throughout. Perhaps as stark as I felt last night, because sometimes you get that way when you wonder. But if I look back over the trajectory of the last year and a half or so, God has taken care of me every step of the way. And every time that I felt like it was close, or that maybe I was at the end of my rope, somehow, God comes through for me in the end. So, and he does that through people. One thing that I've observed about the way that the Holy Spirit operates is that there's such a mystery to it. I mean, there are so many times where a brother or sister in Christ will come through or help me in some way, to where I ask them, I have pinch myself moments where I say, how did you know to come at this time? Or something. And they'll swear up and down to me that they don't know what I'm talking about. They just felt compelled or moved by the Spirit to maybe pull over and help, or to reach out at the time that they did. And sadly, the demonic works similarly. It's a very strange, we could call it the mystery of iniquity. But so that counterfeit evil spirit also networks and shows up in bizarre ways to try and test us as well. So I had a good day today. I did some mulching with a friend of mine, and that took a good part of the afternoon. I started out with my shoulders still hurting, and actually all the shoveling that I was doing helped it. So I'd like to be doing more active things like that when I'm on the weekend, rather than just kind of hanging out and relaxing, as tempting as that is. I always feel better for having done things. I don't think I've mentioned this in last night's video. We're not going to be on here for as long as we were yesterday. But I thought I'd talk about, I went to Mass yesterday and went to confession. Actually, I'd gone to confession twice last week. Once because I really needed it, and then when I left, as soon as I left, I realized, I forgot to confess that I had not gone to Mass the previous week, which I had an excuse for it, but it's still a good idea if you have something on your conscience to do. So I went to confession, and this was actually the day yesterday. So it was before I did the live video where I was kind of down. And I let my guard down with him, and I started to get a little bit emotional, and I said, listen, I know you don't have the time to hear my story, but I sure wish I could tell it to someone. And I basically, after trying to give him little tidbits of what I've been going through, I summarized it with, I wish I could somehow convey to you how horribly attacked I have been by the demonic since 2017, basically. And what he said to me was very interesting. I always hear very interesting things, especially in the confessional from priests. But he said he was encouraging about that. So let me backtrack first before that. I had told him about the food ministry that I had been doing. I told him about some of the work that I had done with a guy down in Covington to make food for the homeless, where we get together in the middle of the morning. Because I was the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I was saying I feel like I'm vocationally called to the church, but I have this past record from when I'm 19. And he said, well, maybe these things that you're doing right now will be good foots in the door for you when it comes time. So that's he was sort of positive in that. Me, I wasn't so much. I'm sort of, Father, if you only knew my trajectory through the Catholic Church up until now. But it's confessional, and it's really not the time to even to go through all of that. But when it got to my comment about the demonic, he said, oh, that's a good sign. That's not the first time I've heard that. And I know what he's saying, and he's right. It's a very good sign for any one of our souls. If you're being attacked by the evil spirit in people, the unclean spirits in people, for Christ shining in you, that's good. That's good news for your soul. It's actually not, yes, sometimes it particularly sucks. But eventually, like let's take yesterday as an example of the video that I did. I wasn't down about the spiritual warfare that I go through. Spiritual warfare is honestly been there, done. I mean, I don't mean to get callous or arrogant about it, but been there, done that, ready for it at all times. I actually sort of enjoy it on some level. Now, I say that knowing that sometimes it was extremely unpleasant, especially when I was at Brown County Jail. There were nights and days on end where I was not having a good time with it all. But it did lead to breakthroughs. So what I'm saying is that it's not really... I kind of embrace that part of it. The real challenge these days is the homelessness part. Especially when I'm down in Covington, if I just had a little room that I could go lay down in at night, get a shower, brush my teeth in front of a meal. It doesn't need to be anything. It could be a dingy dive for all I care. That would be such a big deal. But I'm currently really not. I'm too focused on the ministry. I'm too focused on to even focus on me, to be quite honest. Also, I just feel like that would be a misuse of the time that God is allotting me to sort of, the way I would put it is to make my bones in the spirit. I feel like that's kind of what I've been doing, actually. By the way, happy Mother's Day to everyone. I wish I could have seen my mother today, but also I'm not having any coffee tonight. I'm having Coke Zero. I did treat myself to Raising Cane's today. That is a rare Um, Rare occurrence, but I figured since the money came in, I could do that. So, um, what is it like? If you ever, some of you are going through this out there, and you've yet to kind of, maybe you'll never become homeless. But what is it like to live on the street like this? Hmm. It's really not so bad. If you have your vehicle, especially if you have a vehicle like this, where I was able to take out the back seats and then turn it into like a bedding area. Um, One tip that I would give you would be to downsize. So I have a tendency in this van, and I'm going to be tonight addressing it. I bring too much along with me for the week. And so, thankfully, since I have a place, see the real problem is when you don't have something like I have, where I've got the shed now, where I get to live in it on the weekend and leave stuff there. Then it becomes a real challenge because you're always trying to balance, like, what do I keep, what do I get rid of. The All I can say is that I've found that the less you have is the better when you're living in such a small space like this. So that's what I find that much that I bring with me for the week, I end up not using. I bring far too many books a lot of times with me, thinking, oh, I'll read these, and really it's just all I need is like the Bible and a prayer book or two that I have, and that's it. I don't need a lot of the things that I bring along with me. And so I'm going to be looking at that tonight and really making some executive decisions, because it becomes a burden throughout the week, especially as the days go on. At first, you start out fresh for the week, everything's nice and neat. But over a couple of days, especially because sometimes you're tired and you just go to sleep, and you didn't clean it the way you should have. You didn't clean up in the van the way you should have. That's another tip I would give to people. If you're living in your car, if you can discipline yourself to do it, and I'm giving myself the same advice right now as I say this, but if you can discipline yourself to clean it daily, that would be extremely helpful. It would keep you on top of what can easily become chaos. And then, listen, I'm blessed to be homeless down in Covington, Kentucky, or living in my van when I'm down there, because Covington is one of those cities that is very resource friendly for people who are homeless or in poverty. So that's important, I would say. If you find yourself in the position I'm in and you have your transportation too, you might need to relocate. I had to relocate. There's no way that I would have continued to make it out in Brown County, Ohio. They don't have much of a population of homelessness. There were not many resources. So, but down in Covington, where I'm at, there is a place called Parish Kitchen, where from 11:30, Parish Kitchen is run by the Covington Diocese. So, but that is a place where from 11:30 to 1:30, you can go get a hot meal on a tray. And then across from Kroger, 2 nights a week, Monday and Wednesday, at 5 o'clock, they serve a full hot meal. And then there's a place down the way, Cornerstone. I've never had to go there. Usually that meal from Parish Kitchen during the day, and then if I go to the Nuns, shout out to Rose Garden Home Mission, which is, I set up on the sidewalk to give out the lunches during the day there, as my own ministry. It's not their ministry. I say that only because I want to make the distinction that I'm not operating under the auspices of the Rose Garden Home Mission. They just simply allow me to set up on their public sidewalk. But if you were in this area and you are in poverty at all, You can go to the Rose Garden Home Mission from Monday through Thursday, from 11:30 till about 4:30 every day, and they'll give you 3-4 bags of food if you're a young mother. They will give you diapers and um, uh, baby food and things like that. Really, they've been there for close to 25 years now. They started out, they're still a very small Franciscan order of nuns that started out in New Jersey and then came to Covington about 25 years ago. And their beginning was actually interesting. I was told that it was actually somewhat controversial, that some of the other charities in the area did not want them to come at first. And now, over time, having established themselves, all those other charities now love them and work with them. And actually, a lot of that inner fighting, and I don't need to go into it too long, but from my understanding, it was a lot of other Catholic charities, actually, that were not particularly happy that they were coming. Anyway, so then there's another place called Fairhaven in Covington that feeds, I believe it's every night at like 5 o'clock, a hot meal. Also at Fairhaven, if you go there, listen, I'm just sharing all this with you in case you find yourself homeless somewhere in the Midwest. I would recommend going to Covington. I've learned those resources very well. It's way different than Cincinnati. It's a lot better. So there's also the Northern Kentucky Emergency Shelter, which offers, you have two options with that place. So if you get in, I've never done the nighttime, I've never stayed in a shelter. I've always stayed in my van. But if you want to stay in the shelter, then I think the line starts at like 5 p.m., but you want to get in there earlier. But if all you want to do is like get a shower and do some laundry, then you can do that from 10:30 to, I believe it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the day. In Florence, Kentucky, there's actually a place if you need a shower too. That's daily. So you could go in there daily and get a shower. God bless them. And it's not like across the river at a place called Mary Magdalene Shower House where you wait 2 hours to get a shower sometimes. And there's just a lot of, it's a different clientele. It's on a place called Republic Street, it's almost like a drug den. And there's just all kinds of drug dealing, and it's just a seedier population. So across the river in Covington, Northern Kentucky Emergency Shelter, they're more perhaps stringent on rules and such. And so whenever I've gone in there, I'm in and out of the shower immediately. And then you can do your laundry there. I tend to be a laundromat guy, just because I find it's just easier, and for the cost, it's like $5 usually to do my laundry for the week. I just go to a laundromat. Again, this is all with the caveat that I have a van and am able to do these things. Obviously, your situation would be different if you are like a backpack type of homeless. Then actually, I would think that you would kind of narrow things down to maybe 3 shirts, 2-3 pants, what you're wearing, and then maybe 2 backups. 2 might even be excessive. I mean, I also live by the 3-day rule, where it's like if I haven't had a shower for 3 days, it's time to get a shower, even if I may not think if I think I smell good, I probably don't, and it's probably time to go get one. So Northern Kentucky Emergency Shelter, for a shower. They also have little snacks and foods. If you need a shower, and maybe they're closed for the day, and if you're able to get there, in Florence, Kentucky, there's a place called Fresh Start Shower Ministry, where I'm not sure what time. I didn't get there when it opened, like in the morning. I think we got there at maybe 11 a.m. that day or something. So I'm not sure what time they open, but it's affiliated with a Christian church in that area. And they have 2 2 showers, and people can get a shower all day, and also you can do your laundry there. The shower was actually there. Was Look at both of those places. I can say the showers are clean, and the one thing that I liked about the shower in Florence, unlike at the Northern Kentucky Emergency Shelter, which I'm not really faulting them for, is that at that shelter it's almost like you're in jail. Like you got to keep pressing a button to keep it going. In Florence, you turn it on, you get nice hot water, and they give you 15 minutes, I believe. Actually, I think they give you more. I think they give you a half hour. But when I got in, they were shortening to 15 because there were more people that needed to get in. If it were, in my opinion, they should have it 15 minutes across the board. 30 minutes is too long, unless the person is disabled and needs either assistance, or it's going to take them an extra long time to get that shower. That's different. But if you're like me, able-bodied and all that, 15 minutes is actually too much. I'm usually in and out and done with my shower in five minutes, because you have to be considerate. Not everybody is, but like I try to be considerate and know there's so many other people out there waiting to get a shower themselves. And some of them may be having job interviews to go to and trying to reestablish their life. So it's kind of important that they're able to get in there. Underneath 3rd Street on the Cincinnati side, under the bridge, every Thursday night at 5 o'clock, it's a ministry run by a guy named Jerry Paoli. Actually, he's a pastor out here in Goshen, Ohio. Cliff is the person who introduced me to Jerry in that ministry. I believe they used to be called Kingdom Warriors, but now it's a ministry just called People Loving People. And basically a group of people from Goshen and other parts of Ohio will meet there on Thursday. Serving starts around 6 p.m. And they bring down these trailers. They'll set up all kinds of tables. It's sort of like a potluck. People bring hot dishes and meals, and the food's good. There's usually a good word to start out the evening. There's also a ministry called Bridge the Gap, which gets together in Over the Rhine on the Cincinnati side. I believe that's Monday night. I have not been there for a long time. They meet in a parking lot, and it's kind of similar to what Jerry does. And it's probably a bit bigger in its setup, and the food's delicious. Nice hot food. There's always tons of people that show up for this. So you won't go hungry, and you can find the showers too. And if push comes to shove, I would say, okay, so there's these crystal geyser spring water that you can buy at Dollar Tree for like $1.25 for a big gallon of it. I would recommend getting a couple of those if you're in a bind. And I mean, obviously your mind is going to think of these things anyway, but maybe this is helpful to someone out there who maybe finds themselves in this position. And try to find yourself somewhere remote, maybe a park with a lot of trails to where you can just sort of walk off, where no one's going to see you. I would make sure you're definitely not seen off the trailhead. And then, you can at least stay in your underwear or something like that and take a shower, bring some shampoo. I shop at Dollar Tree all the time for everything. So Dollar Tree is the place where I get like my shampoo or my deodorant. Thank God that they're still around and generally still holding fast to their price point. So, and shout out to Lord's Gym in Covington, Kentucky too. Actually, Lord's Gym is an interesting. They have that location, and they have one in Cincinnati in Price Hill. And basically the idea of it is it's supposed to be a place for the local youth or troubled youth to sort of be able to hang out. They can learn boxing. There's several boxing trainers there. I can't remember his name, but one of them was a professional boxer. who sometimes when I've been there, you can watch his fights while he's training guys. I mean, some of these guys are really good at boxing. And, but it's also become this place for the homeless, especially during the winter time. But even now, I mean, it is growing quite a bit. And so I think they open at like 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. And they've got a couple of big coffees brewing. And you can just sit there and hang out. A lot of times there's food and snacks off to the side that, you know, it depends on who's donated lately in that, but oftentimes there's stuff like that for people to eat while they're there. Oh, and that's where Tom Edwards, who again I used to get together with in the middle of the morning, Tom Edwards' ministry makes like breakfast burritos and breakfast sandwiches for them. We meet at like 3 a.m. and usually done by 7 or 8, and then he'll go drive it over there for the homeless to have, like, you know, a nice little nutritious breakfast in the morning. It is nutritious. It's often like in the breakfast burrito, it's like egg, sausage, diced tomatoes. It's seasoned really nice. It's got a good cheese. Tom's been doing a really awesome ministry. Tom's an older former Marine, real tall, and he's I love his heart, man. He's a military guy. So you better be, if you want to work with him or you want to do volunteering with him, you better be grounded in Christ well and able to sort of let things roll, you know. And he does the same, actually. I love Tom. But anyway, so you can get like a meal like that in the mornings. And then throughout the day, there's like a Bible study that they do with everyone. And surprisingly enough, a lot of the people are actually quite engaged during that time. I think they use an NLT. Yeah, they use an NLT as their translation. They've never disrespected me for my Catholicism or my rosary and that. In fact, they've been somewhat positive on that. They even get like, I don't mean to tell you so much, but again, if you're hungry or if you need help and you're somewhere in that area and you're struggling where you're at to get all the resources you need, I again would recommend coming to Covington. Because they have also, like, in the freezer section, like Chick-fil-A donates chicken nuggets and stuff to them. So breaded and unbreaded chicken pieces. It's delicious, actually. Obviously, who doesn't like Chick-fil-A? And then there's like a gym there too. So if you're, honestly, it's really nice to be able to use some of the exercise equipment as a homeless person, because I don't have access to that kind of thing. Now, if you have a little bit more money and resources, what a lot of homeless people do is they'll get a membership to Planet Fitness. But the reason why is because you can get a shower there every day. And, you know, the showers, but honestly, it's really not worth it to me because I can get a shower every day anyway. And they need like your bank account information and they don't take cash. And it's just I don't know, it's not as friendly of a system. I would say this much. Rather than, we don't need more food pantries. What we could really use throughout the United States in terms of initiatives for the homeless would be shower ministries. Showers / kind of hangout ministries. I can't tell you that one of the biggest challenges, and also laundry. If there were like, really, if there was a place that was like a laundromat, the problem is a laundromat for the homeless would start getting abused by people who are not legitimately homeless, who would just start filling up the whole place with their stuff. So I don't know how you would pull that off logistically, but maybe a program would be good like with participating laundromats who would allow for the homeless to come with vouchers to use their laundering services. That'd be kind of cool. And maybe the counties could give them some kind of kickback um, for offering that or providing that. Now, where Covington is not necessarily friendly to the homeless is they have anti-camping laws, and so yes, the police often, I've heard mixed reviews like from the homeless there. Like sometimes they turn a blind eye, and sometimes they will, you know, catch you up and put you in jail for it. So I guess it depends on the officers that you're dealing with. I was talking to one young man who's been, gosh, over the last few years on just petty misdemeanors, just constantly in jail. Like one of them was he was under an overpass and he was real far up, you know, at the top of it where no one really could see him. And he was in a like a kid's pool taking a bath. Now with, I believe he had like boxers on or something. Maybe he didn't. But even still, I can understand it's like, just let him be. You know, he's actually a really nice kid, and quit. That would be my advice to law enforcement. Just, these people are at like the bottom of their life. Like, could you just let them be? Let them. Do you think that it's ideal for them that they're taking a bath or a shower out in public? Now, was that probably the best idea? Probably not. But, you know, I can understand how that something like that could happen. It's kind of like the situation over across the river at Shelter House, where, okay, so this is with Shelter House. I have never heard good things about. I'm just being honest. The guys tend to not like it. Very few people say they appreciated it, the program and all of that. Most people complain about how they're treated and how unpleasant it is to stay there. All I know is that when I was newly homeless, I would go there after I was done at the Basilica for, I would say, the first couple of months of me being homeless. You know, you learn as you go. I would sleep in my van in the parking lot of Shelter House in Cincinnati. And one morning, I have a picture of the guy. I wish I videoed everything that's happened to me. But so he came out in the morning, having seen me relieve myself in the bushes in the morning. Well, everyone does that all night long and in the morning, because there's no outdoor, the situation there is there's no outdoor restrooms for anyone. There's no portalet even, no nothing. And yet they have these people that are homeless coming there all night long who they won't let in. They won't let in until they do admissions the next day. And so they have this situation where there's usually 5 or 10 people laying on benches outside. And of course they have to relieve themselves overnight at some point. And so there's these bushes that, yeah, I mean, when you go in them, you smell like urine. And, but he was basically chewing me out for that. And I told him, I was like, well, how can you run a facility where you're supposed to be helping the homeless and you don't have any, you're saying stay out here until the morning, but you have nowhere for them to go to the bathroom. That doesn't make any sense. You know, so it's not my fault that you don't have any facilities for people at the homeless shelter outside for them to go to the bathroom. I've heard it's because people might overdose or they might, you know, use the portalet and die in it. It's like, you know, McDonald's could say the same thing as to why they would not have a restroom. You could OD in anywhere. It's BS, and it's a way for them to not do right by the homeless. Another thing that I noticed at Shelter House, I don't think I'm ever going to need this program, so I'm just talking openly about it. But I noticed that there's a fenced-in area. So there's two. There's the area for the homeless out front, and then out back there's this fenced-in area with like these nice picnic benches and like this, like a roofed pavilion over the picnic benches, and and it's way bigger and way nicer than anything that's offered to the homeless, and that's for the staff. And I'm thinking, so you got a homeless shelter where the facility seems to cater to the staff more than it does the homeless. In fact, it does. I find that ridiculous. And I couldn't help but even sit there some nights and say, okay, so you have all these staff that can walk in and out all night long, and they do. They walk out for their break, they're coming in for their next shift. So you have people that aren't homeless that can come in and out of this facility all day long. But the homeless who need it are kept out all night long, sometimes in the cold, sometimes in the elements, and only allowed to be admitted in the morning. Why don't you at least have some sort of sheltered area? I mean, the answer is obvious. The reason they don't have these things is because they don't want the homeless. They don't. They want to make the. I feel like most cities are making the mistake that if they think that if they make homelessness unappealing, kind of like the penal system even. I mean, the two are interlinked, really. If they just make it unpleasant that you're not going to want to be homeless and you're going to get back into the system and you're going to... But a lot of these people, the problem is they're not facing the reality that a lot of these people have absolutely fallen through the cracks. I can't tell you how many people do I meet who have no family, no one who really cares for them out there, no real resources. Some of them are old with disabilities, missing limbs. There's definitely a lot of veterans living on the street. They don't, I don't know the exact answer to it all, but honestly, what Lord's Gym is doing down in Covington is far better than what a lot of these homeless shelter programs do. Meaning, because most of the homeless, they know where to lay their head at night. We've all figured out a way to where we can lay our head at night. It's really throughout the day, where do we hang out? Where can we sit our butts? And it's just, we need more facilities like that. Homelessness is not going to go away. Homelessness is, as we go forward, especially with the skyrocketing prices, all these wars and talks of war, and just the poor leadership from Washington, and I'm not getting political in that, I'm just saying, I think many people would acknowledge, and really a lot of this comes down to the city and county level, but it's only going to get worse. Homelessness is only going to get worse. I mean, people are, every day, the more inflation just goes up and up, and people's wages just stay stagnant. People just can't make it anymore. It's getting too weird. Let's see here. Let me look at the chat here. How's everybody doing tonight, by the way? We're going to wrap up here soon, but... Hi, Daddy. No, thank you. I'm going to make you walk by them to live between misery. Your kids watch them also. What kind of society is it? American people need to take care of their country. Take their country back again. I mean, have we ever really... We've always had to just sort of do what we're told, haven't we? If you're lucky, you're in an area where the corruption's not as bad as others. If you're unlucky and unfortunate, you live in an area where law enforcement, the courts are corrupt. Come on. I love when the court, when the legal system tries to pretend like you're irrational for saying such things. We all know. how corrupt it is, especially in 2026. In a very, it's popular to say you're Christian in 2026, but in reality, this is a very godless nation these days. You know, that's a fact. I mean, the churches are unimpressive sometimes. But I will say that there are so many ministries down in Covington, and part of me wants to maybe I need to start like driving around and going to different cities at times to see, you know, what it's like there to be homeless. But I've been fortunate enough to have found Covington to be, I'd mark it pretty high, while being ignorant of what other cities offer in terms of the services that they offer to the homeless. Now, for me, and this is where we'll wrap up, for me, my dream in the future, the prayers that I was praying early on about building a shelter before I became homeless, these were like prayers that God was putting on me. It would be a very small program. So the idea that I have for a homeless shelter would be, in the Catholic name, to find men and women among the homeless population, and maybe we could pool them. Maybe people could send them from other cities, okay, to our place, to where we're basically, rather than trying to get them a job at 7-Eleven or get all their social SSI stuff, the rare candidates who are homeless because they are servants of the Lord, because they are God's chosen people, who feel called into ministry, and maybe some of them even literally are homeless because they made decisions based on what Christ asked them to do, like selling everything and that, to minister to the homeless, to have a place to maybe find whether this person might be vocationally called into the priesthood or as a nun or as a monk. I think that would be a very interesting model. I used to think it was more for, I realized the more I've spent time among the homeless, that's a rare individual. They're out there, but they're not. And also too, I would then have to nudge the church to be like, you can't be so rigid. You know, I mean, the standards for monks back in the Middle Ages are nothing like they are today. I mean, you could be the town juvenile delinquent. In fact, that's where you would send your rebellious son or daughter, is to the local monastery or convent to straighten them out. So maybe this is something that could be done in another country and have them sent to that country. I don't know. I feel like the United States, everything, the church, if the church is getting mired in anything these days, it's in bureaucratic, red tape, legalistic rules that do not align with the gospel. In the churches, perhaps whether out of necessity for survival or because they just don't want to rock the boat, continue to go along with it as if this is good for the church, when actually it's strangling the churches. It's choking the life out of them. You know, I truly believe that we have gotten, especially in the United States, way too obsessed with the old man, the old woman, who you once were. You know, it's almost like to serve in the church is the same policies apply to like serving in a corporation. Like, you got to be drug tested, background checked, vetted, everything else. It's like, guys, God's church, Jesus Christ's church, is filled with sinners. You know, we don't need more hypocritical, self-righteous people in the church. We need people with testimonies of having gone from darkness to light, especially in the days that we're living in, when the last thing we want to have, and then I'll get off my pulpit here, in regards to the Catholic Church, is a priest class that is absolutely out of touch with what's going on in the culture, what the youth are facing. That's not a good situation to be in. To not know what kind of drugs are out there. That's the world that I grew up in the 90s. And frankly, because the church, let's talk about that just real quick, and then I want to look at the chat. But in the 90s, one of the biggest reasons I think I strayed from the Catholic Church is because it really wasn't speaking coherently about the culture I was living in. And I didn't have words for it at the time. All I know is in 7th grade, I had headphones on and I'm listening to NWA in gym class and starting to listen to gangster. I'd go up to the record store and I'm listening to gangster rap. And just a couple years later, it's like Tupac and Biggie and all that. And nobody's saying anything in the church about any of this. You know, it's as if I feel like they felt like what they offer is so obviously great that why would we need to address that? Not only that, but a lot of the priests were absolutely, their heads were in the sand and they had no awareness of this happening in the culture. Let alone would they ever think or dare to bring it up on Sunday during their homily. Oh, I'm sure it happened. I'm sure it happened in different parts of the country. It sure wasn't happening in my local community. And it's not happening enough now either, right? And yet, it is such low-hanging fruit. We could help turn this youth around in a generation or two by simply just fighting back with the truth of what the music industry is, what the movie industry is, and it needs to start coming from, I know a lot of you aren't with me on the Catholic thing, and listen, we're going to have to agree to disagree, but all I have to say on that is, if the Catholic Church were to start, if there were elements of the Catholic Church that started to sound a little bit more like Good Fight Ministries, you know, who made those series, they sold their souls for rock and roll, without losing the essence of what we're really here to do, the sacraments and praise and worship of God. But if we were to incorporate more of that into what we offer, and then also expand, I feel, through that, our understanding of what exactly is demonic. I don't necessarily, how do I say this without saying too much? So I listen to a lot of the exorcists that are on YouTube, like Father Chad Ripperger, Father Dan Rehill. There's a few others there's two others that I can think of visually, but I don't remember their names, who I've watched their videos of. And I feel like there's this sentiment, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I need to be educated on this, but I feel like there's this sentiment that's heavy on most things are mental illness. But there are these diabolical cases that come through. I think that perhaps that's not accurate. Maybe everything isn't rising to the level of outright exorcism, but based on what I've seen, I feel like I am living in a very demonic culture. And anyone who's gone through what a person like I've gone through and what some of you out there have gone through with what we sometimes have called gang stalking, which is more or less uh, demonic spirits, for lack of a better word, networked, who attack you, partly because of who you're going to be, and also to try to destroy you by never allowing you to forget or live down your past. That's one of the hallmarks of gang stalking, as I've found it, is that there's this constant reminder of your unworthiness and your worthlessness and who you were in sin. And it makes you think that there, if you look at it from the flesh and blood aspect, you think there's some sort of vigilantism aspect to it going on, which perhaps there is. But I've often thought if there is a robust flesh and blood component, which I'm starting to think there is. I mean, there's really no way to kind of skirt around it. But I think that a lot of the people that are involved don't realize that they're on team evil. I think that they really have this perception that they're on team good, team God even in many respects. And I just don't think that they realize, if they were to just listen to our testimonies more and realize how many of us have had outright demonic encounters through all this, they'd realize they're on the wrong side of things. There's only one force in the world that's obsessed with who you were and not who you are and where you're going. And that is always the devil. You know? God, he's in the business, Jesus Christ is in the business of making men and women new again. You know? Of indwelling men and women with the Holy Spirit and operating through them. It's a beautiful thing. Otherwise, I mean, this world, no wonder this world's so depressing. You can never be anything but what you were, or whatever your worst moment was in life. That's who you always are. No wonder people are tired of this world. And we've gotten really, again, that would help the homeless situation, is to start really giving some of these people second chances. Some of them have literally, they're just unemployable. Some of them go through, do you know how common it is for me to hear other homeless talk about gang stalking? Yeah, I've heard, it's as if when I bring it up, the term, the world that I came from, that term and the idea of it would have gotten looks and eyebrows raised, but it doesn't faze anybody anymore. It's almost as if everyone's in on this secret. For sure. And I don't know if it's a sign of the times that we're living in. I don't know if it's the separation of the sheep and the goats. I don't know if it's, I don't know. I don't know if it's the end times. I'm glad I don't know. Because God gives me the spirit of optimism, of thinking I think it's probably not exactly the end of times, because there's so many places on planet Earth that still need conversion. There's still, I was just talking to my buddy today when we were mulching about a guy who's been doing ministry in Papua New Guinea, and he literally taught them a new language and then translated a Bible for them in that language just recently, and is now working on a second translation. Because what you're dealing with in Papua New Guinea is lots of different tribes who speak a very similar dialect, but each one is a bit unique. And so he's working on a second one right now. So that's just a small example. In Burma, I think, because I met a guy in Kenton County who was there because of ICE, who told me, I think something like the country's like 7% Christian. So there's so much work to do still on that front for people to really have knowledge of and accept that Christ is their answer. But it's undeniable that the days we're living in, something, I think perhaps it may be really unique to the United States. I think in the United States today we are living in an extremely demonic culture. And that is because people are um, wealthy, uh, beyond their means. They have access to anything they want on the internet. Any type of sin that they want to explore, they can explore it on the internet. Hookup culture is rampant. Our movies are disgusting and demonic. The music is disgusting and demonic. I'm talking the popular music and the popular movies. You know, and just the sense of, I was thinking about this today, like, you know, I see all these young men driving around in like noisy sports cars that aren't really that impressive. You can almost tell when you see that noisy Honda driving down, like, you know, they're like 20 years old or younger. But, you know, growing up, I was told by people, oh, that's normal. It's just normal teenage rebellion. There ain't nothing normal about what's been going on with the youth for generations now in the United States. In fact, it is an anomaly and an abnormality in human history with how decadent, entitled, self-absorbed, self-centered people are. And I think part of it is the fault of, I mean, my parents were wrong. I was spoiled growing up. I was spoiled. And they were parents that intentionally were trying not to spoil me. But just living a Western way of life as a young man, I was spoiled beyond belief. You know? And really, I think that if you want to, if I were to ever have kids of my own, get married, have a couple of kids, have one or two kids, I would obviously show them that I love them, but do my best to make sure that they don't, that they know what it's like to go without sometimes. Maybe more than not. Not in any kind of like, you know, when it comes to food or things like that. But some people say, I wouldn't want to, you got to prepare your kids for the real world and you don't want to keep them out in the middle, keep them in a bubble. I don't know. I think that maybe until they're 18, I think it's a good idea, especially in the culture that you and I are living in, to keep them in a bubble and to keep them isolated from it. Because what we're really saying is that the devil, the way I look at it is like, oh, so you should allow the devil to have access to their minds, to brainwash them for the, quote, real world, when I'm actually when I would be trying to tell them about the really real world, which is the spiritual one, and to prepare them for that world so that when they do go out, it's not as confusing. Anyway, that's probably good for the live stream tonight. Again, if anyone, I did put the link in the description. We raised good funds last night, but there's always going to be an ongoing need for that. I've been enjoying doing these live streams. I feel like they're maybe a little bit more valuable in a way of connecting me with the viewers still. And maybe this is an interesting way to continue the platform. So I plan to do more live streams as we go forward. So if anyone would like to contribute, though, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you to those who have already. God bless you all in Jesus' name. Space Girl, thank you for holding down the fort. To everyone that was commenting, I'm sorry I didn't really, this is classic how I've always been. I never really have read the chats very much. I apologize for that. I'll try to get better at that. God bless you all. Have a wonderful night. Take care.